alive, but it's continually getting faster and faster. And I think the pandemic is going to cause a hockey stick reaction when it comes to robotics, machine learning, and automation. Because if you think about it from a business perspective, if you think about what your number one risk is, going through this pandemic, and your number one risk are humans, people, your HR, right? Your human resources. And so what I'm going to see is a lot of businesses figuring out how to minimize that risk as much as possible. And you can kind of see it today, where, for example, in Singapore, in just a matter of months, the movie theater, I think it was Singapore, the movie theaters in Singapore, one of the chains went from having people working in those movie theaters to now actually it's all automated with robotics. Supermarkets in Singapore and in Korea have already switched from people processing stuff to now having machines do that, right? And so that's going to get faster and faster and faster. And so an understanding of digitalization, right? An understanding of computer science. And I'm not saying that you need to go become a computer scientist, but you need to understand the basics of it, how it works. You need to understand computational thinking and engineering principles and all the things that you need to solve problems, because that's the world that we currently are going to live in. And the reason you need to understand those things, and I'm not saying you need to go become a computer scientist, but you need to understand it because whatever solutions you come up with have to have a digitalization component. And that's true no matter what industry that you're in. So, for example, in education, we can't talk about education without edtech. We can't talk about banking without FiTech. We can't talk about any industry without the technology angle on that. And it's important because if I'm sitting here in this house in Flagstaff, Arizona, and the problem that I'm trying to solve is to get to the airport, but I don't know that cars exist, what kinds of solutions would I come up with? So I need to understand how all this works so that I can understand how to create the best solutions for that. So that's the first thing, and understanding that we are in this world of machines and it's going to continue to broaden. At the same time, when you think about the skills that you need for this world, you have to look at skills of what I call human skills, these skills that complement the machine so that they work together. And they're the same skills that we've been talking about for a generation. Problem solving, critical thinking, collaboration, the ability to learn, creativity, right? Those things. And there's different versions of that list. That's my list. But that list of skills that you need to build so that you can maximize your human potential and your human skills to use digitalization to solve the problems that you're passionate about. And the most important skill out of that list, because if you asked me 6 months ago, is there one more important than the other? I would have said no. But now, I would say that there is one that's more important than the others, and that is the ability to learn. Because with the ability to learn, you can process anything. And the ability to learn is not how to take a test or how to outline a textbook or what you can do in school. The ability to learn is self-awareness. It's this idea that I don't know how to do something. I now know where to go find how to do it, and then I can test myself as to whether or not I've learned how to do it, right? This self-awareness where you know you don't know how to do something and you either find out how to do it or you ask people to help you find out how to do it. And that takes a certain mindset to be able to do, right? Like one of the terms that sets me off, especially in the entrepreneurial world, this is a trigger phrase for me, is the idea of fake it till you make it. I couldn't disagree more with that concept of faking it till you make it. If you come work for me, I don't want you to fake it. I want to know what you don't know so that I can help you figure it out. I want you to know what you don't know so that you can learn how to do it, right? And so this idea of the ability to learn is critical. I launched a YouTube channel last year and knew absolutely zero about videography and how to edit films. And I went to my daughter who's, she works at CNN. She's an editor at CNN and she makes fake news. And I asked her, what do I need to know? Where do I start? And she told me, shoot at 24 frames per second, shoot at 1080. You don't need to shoot in 4K, double your frame rate. If you want to shoot in slow-mo, you're going to have to pick up your frame rate. And you should use an ND filter if you go outside because it's going to blow out your aperture. And so she said, that's where you start. Start there. And I said, cool, thank you for that. And then here's my next question. What the hell do any of those words mean? Right? I knew nothing about those things. And in a year, I can have the best arguments with film producers about whether you should shoot 10-bit internal on a camera or you should shoot 12-bit external, and what the 16-bit do to film and how do you color grade it, right? So I can have those conversations because I started with, I don't know how to do something. Where can I go learn how to do it? And then I can see if I have learned how to do it, because if you go watch my videos, the first couple of them look like hostage videos, and now they're getting better, right? And so I can see the progression. So that ability to learn is probably the most important thing that you can focus on. And the last thing, and you guys can cut me off if I'm going too long. The last thing I want you to think about is a question that you've been asked your whole life, right? Which is, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I'm here to tell you to completely ignore that question, to stop. You don't have to answer that question. That is an old world question. When someone asks you that question, it means that that's the question that someone asked them 50 years ago. That question doesn't make sense. The world is changing too fast. Jobs don't exist. Jobs that don't exist. I'm working for a company that didn't exist when I graduated from graduate school. So how could I ever prepare for a 14-year career at Google? So you can't think about what you want to be when you grow up. What I want you to think about instead, and this is perfect for what you guys are doing during this project, is what's the problem that you're trying to solve, right? What's that problem that spins in your head? And in this case, it could be a social problem, but it doesn't have to be. It could be how to make better cameras, better microphones, make cars go faster. It could be making anything better. My daughter, the problem that she's trying to solve is how to tell female stories through video, right? Like, it doesn't matter what that is, but what's that problem that you have been wanting to solve? And then the next question is just as important, is I want you to think about, how do you want to solve it? And that's an important question, because there's a million ways to solve a problem. And if you said, let's say climate change was the problem that you wanted to solve, and you went to adults like me and other people, and I don't even know why I consider myself an adult, but if you went to older people and you said, I want to solve climate change, they might say to you, oh, you need to be a scientist. You need to go study STEM. You need to go get a degree in sustainable development. But maybe that's not where your passions are. Maybe that's not where your skills are. Maybe that's not where your talents are. Those things matter. It makes you the individual, right? It gives you that unique perspective. Let's say climate change is the problem that you want to solve, and you're a gifted photographer. So the way you can solve climate change is by going out and documenting climate change, or telling stories about climate change. Or you're a gifted educator. You were just born to be a teacher, and the way you solve climate change is by educating people about climate change, or creating an education program. So how do you want to solve that problem? And to do that, you need to know yourself. You need to know where your passions are, where your skills are, where your talents are. And then the last question I want you to think about is, what do you need to know to solve that problem? What are the knowledge, skills, and abilities you need to have to solve that problem, both when it comes to climate change and photography? And being able to develop those knowledge, skills, and abilities, because you guys have literally the world at your fingertips. You have access to all the world's information. There is absolutely nothing that you can't learn. You can stay up for 16 hours, like I did yesterday, learning how to use a star tracker, which is a long story, and learn all day, and then go to bed, wake up the next morning, and your brain is empty again, and you can learn all over again, right? That's the potential that you have, and now you have access to all the world's information. So that's what I want you to think about. And with that, I will pause, and then if you guys have questions, I can answer any questions that you guys might have. And everyone fall asleep.
I know if anyone has questions, you can unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask them, or put them in the chat. You can do it privately to Jamie, or you can ask publicly in front of everyone, but any questions would be great.
While we wait for questions, I'm up on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's just my name. I got a lot of career advice. That's what I basically took the 25 years of my experience, and I'm putting it in video format of all the lessons that I've learned. So I'm doing a bunch of those as well. So you take a look at those as well.
You're clearly very passionate about education and how education is developing. Where did that come from? Where did you find that was your passion that you wanted to pursue?
Well, so for me, I don't think that, you know, it just quite frankly, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for education, right? For me, in my kind of generation, I had to have a piece of paper, right? I had to have a high school degree, a college degree, a graduate degree. I had to have those pieces of paper to show any credibility at all. And because I was able to do that, I'm here talking to you today, right? And so that's where education comes from. And also, just in a general sense, like the ability to learn, just learning in general, education and what you can do with education, I don't think that there's anything better to focus on. And so that's where the passion comes from.
So what would you give as one piece of advice to young people when they're starting their own business? What's the most important thing to keep in mind besides education and just arming yourself with that knowledge?
Yeah, so here's the thing. When you think about businesses, you can't think about a business. And by the way, I have a couple of my own companies that I'm about to launch, but that's a different conversation. But what you need to think about is not how do I make money? And obviously that's not what you guys are about, but it's if you find a way to go make money, you're going to end up being frustrated with that. You're going to end up making a lot of money and hating your life at the same time. But when you find a passion, when you find a problem that you want to solve and the way you want to solve it, it's not work anymore. It just becomes your life. And so this idea of work-life balance is not something I've ever really paid attention to. I just have my life. And sometimes in my life, I work on talking to young people on a video call. And then sometimes in my life, I go to the Grand Canyon and I take astrophotography pictures. It just becomes your life. And that's the most important thing. It's very, very similar to when you hear a baseball player or any sports figure say in an interview, like, I can't believe they pay me to play this game, right? And that's what finding that passion turns into. It turns into, I can't believe that I can do this and someone pays me, right? And so that's what you should focus on.
Okay, it looks like we have a question from Arnab.
Do you want to read it or do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Why don't you read it?
He says, one of the things I've struggled with when trying to learn a new skill is finding quality information when I don't have enough money or any money to pay for a mentorship or other education services. How can I overcome that? And he goes on to say, one thing I've heard other people say is that finding your passion is also not a very productive mindset. What would you say to those naysayers?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of naysayers. On the first part, I think it depends on what you want to learn and the way you want to learn it, right? So for example, for me, everything that I've learned about videography and even astrophotography is through watching YouTube videos. Those skills are easy to kind of learn if you're watching videos of people doing those things and showing you and walking you through that. Now, that's one level. That's kind of where you start. And there's YouTube videos literally about everything. I think the last number I saw was 400 hours of video gets uploaded on YouTube every minute, right? So it's out there. So that's kind of where you start. And then from there, then you can branch out into more specific defined learning opportunities. So for example, let's take astrophotography. There's enough information out there about astrophotography, but then there's also these courses that astrophotographers put online for 99 bucks. And I just recently bought one of those because it gives me everything in a linear way. So for 100 bucks, I'm learning astrophotography. Compare that to, I wanted to learn astrophotography 20 years ago, and we're talking about thousands of dollars you have to spend to do something like that, right? So the cost of learning is basically rock bottom. And so that's one way of doing it. Then there's subscription services, whether it's like Skill Builder or Skillshare, or even something like lynda.com, if that's still around. Now, those kinds of programs are on a subscription base, can also teach as well. So there are lots of opportunities. And then when it comes to naysayers in general, look, you got to have a reality distortion field, right? If you told me when I was 16, if I told you when I was 16 years old, under the circumstances, living with a single mother in the ghetto and Hell's Kitchen, on welfare and food stamps, if I said, hey, one day I'm going to be an executive working for a tech company, the most powerful company in the world, people would laugh, right? But that you have to have that reality distortion field. And I still have it even today. Like when I launched my YouTube channel, I did not launch my YouTube channel to not have 1 million subscribers one day. And my wife rolls her eyeballs at me whenever I say it, but that's my reality distortion field. So having that vision, that reality distortion field about what you can accomplish is the most important thing to focus on.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Can I make some comments?
Absolutely.
Hi, my name is Octavio Pajaro. I joined late. I'm sorry, I was tied up. And I'm a good friend of John Hall's and his wife Carol, and my wife is on this there too. So I didn't catch the beginning of your talk, but a lot of things you said are so, I really relate to them. I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon, and I remember when I was growing up in the late 60s and 70s, everything was kind of compartmentalized into law or this or that. And what attracted me to medicine is that there was no part of being a human being that didn't apply to medicine. So whatever it is, you loved it. So it was a big problem that needed so much input from so many things. And now we realize that really every problem, every question we try to answer, like you were saying, you pick the side that you like, the part aspect of it. But if you want to figure out how to teach about women on videotape, there's all aspects of that that need. And the other thing is, as a doctor, I have medical students ask me all the time, how do you get work-life balance? That's such a common question nowadays in young people. And I said, there's no such thing.
Right.
It's just you. And you prioritize and you be what you want to be. And some days you need to be a father. And some days you need to be in the hospital taking care of somebody sick.
Right.
And if you compartmentalize it and weigh it, it's never going to be balanced in any way, whatever way you want to look at it.
Right.
And so I really agree with you when you said that.
Yeah, just real quick, you're going to appreciate this. I have a 5-year-old who is absolutely obsessed with the human body. Like, where most people like turn away, she wants to see how they cut the chest open and open it up and dive deep in. Like, we literally, our night book, we don't read Roger Rabbit books at night. We literally, we read those body books for like 10-year-olds that, you know, like the different parts and like the brain and how things function. She loves it. And so you can already tell at a young age, just like my older daughter, she's 27, and she had been making movies since she was 5 years old. Sometimes what you're passionate about comes out very clearly and very early.
Yeah, that's great. And both those things can be used to help somebody's heart.
Right.
Both those aspects, right? You
true.
need every aspect of humanity to solve these problems.
Right.
Agreed. You guys, thank you so much. We're going to hold the questions now to the end. We just had Professor Herr join. So if we can give Jamie a round of applause, I would appreciate that virtually, if that's possible. And Jamie, just thank you again for sharing your experiences and your story with us. It's so inspiring, and it's exactly what these kids need to hear, is that they can do anything with whatever they have or wherever they are. I love hearing that. It's so entrepreneurism. So you guys, Professor Hugh Herr is here. He is one of the most incredible social impact entrepreneurs, and one part of this challenge that I've absolutely enjoyed the most, I think, besides working with the kids, is getting the chance to connect with incredible people like Professor Herr and Jamie Casap here. I just can't even tell you how inspiring and motivating it is to be able to speak with them and have their support for this program that's trying to, give these kids and students the opportunities and experiences and knowledge and skill sets to, create a difference and create a better world for everyone living in it. So in 1982, Professor Herr suffered the loss of both legs as a result of a mountain climbing accident. Like many of the most inspiring people in the world, he's faced this adversity head on. While most would view themselves as forever handicapped, Professor Herr refuses to think of his body as broken, but rather that we lack the technology to support him, and that's actually what's broken. So his resilience actually led him on a path to direct the biomechatronics research group at the MIT Media Lab, and also to co-direct the MIT Center for Extreme Bionics. So among his countless contributions to science, this accident actually also led to the invention of various prostheses, including a robotic ankle foot replacement that mimics the action of a biological leg, which is just astounding. So without further ado, please virtually put your hands together to welcome Professor Herr, and to quote his lab's motto, they are building technology towards an end to disability. So, Professor Herr.
saying, in 1982, both of my legs were amputated due to tissue damage from frostbite. So I woke up with a completely new body, and I asked my doctor what I'd be able to do, from a physical perspective. And he asked me, "What do you want to do?" And I told him I wanted to ride my bicycle, I wanted to drive my car, and I most certainly wanted to return to mountain climbing. And he, without hesitation, said, "You'll be able to drive a car, but I'm afraid with hand controls." And he said, "I'm so sorry, you won't be able to ride a bicycle nor return to your chosen sport of mountain climbing." So I cried for about 24 hours, and then I realized he didn't know me. I'm a persistent fellow, and he also didn't know the nature of technology. Technology isn't fixed in time. There's a thing called innovation. Technology adapts and gets better and better in time. So what did not exist in 1982, might exist a year later, or certainly a decade later. So I didn't take the doctor's advice, and I went climbing. And here I'm almost 8 feet tall, and footholds out of reach from most of my climbing competitors. So as a young man, I began dreaming of what my body could be. I really began to view the space beneath my amputated residuums as an opportunity. Because in that space, I could design anything. Maybe bionic limbs that will enable me to run faster than a person with biological limbs. Maybe my limbs would be limbs at all, and they would have wings, and I could fly. So as a young man, I began dreaming of what my body might be through science and technology. And that really motivated me to study hard, and I went from a DC student to today an MIT professor. So these are my legs today. Each leg is computer controlled and has 12 sensors that measure positions, accelerations, temperatures, torques, and so on, and a muscle tendon-like actuator. So again, the center is a very broad initiative across many domains of science and engineering. It's an integrative approach to basically hacking the body and really advancing fundamental technologies that really, in a dramatic way, mitigate disability across disabilities that impact cognition, emotion, acuity, as well as physicality. One key challenge that we face is to link the nervous system to mechatronics and synthetic mutations. We want persons with unusual bodies that have conditions to be able to think and affect artificial computation. And we want also the artificial computation to be able to input information into the nervous system in a closed loop fashion. And we're pursuing this in 2 areas. One area is amputation. So there's been a lot of work building robotic smart prostheses. So this is a powered limb that adapts to the environment. Again, it has computers across the limb, enabling this US soldier that was hit by an IED in Afghanistan, enabling him to run up a rocky path. But this bionic limb is not connected to his nervous system. He can't think and affect the motors, nor can he feel the bionic limb as part of his body. So we feel that the way limbs are amputated has to be advanced further. So as you can see here, these are 2 surgical anatomical textbooks, one from 1860 and a second one on the right that's a modern textbook in 2016, teaching largely the exact same method for amputating a limb. Unfortunately, I've received the Civil War era way of amputation. I feel my feet as a phantom awareness, but I can't move them. It feels like my feet are in rigid ski boots. And the reason is that when my leg was amputated, the muscles in my residuum were attached to my fascia and bone so that they can't interact with other muscles dynamically. So the way muscle tendons work is they act in agonist-antagonist pairs, and those muscle dynamics tell the brain about the position, speed, and load on our joints. That's how we can close our eyes and move our elbow and know its position and speed without looking at it. So to solve this problem at MIT, we invented the agonist-antagonist mild neural interface. I'll call it AMI for short. So the AMI is two muscles that are connected surgically in series, such that when one muscle contracts, it stretches its muscle partner. And through these dynamics, the central nervous system receives information from biological sensors about the muscle length, speed, and force. So can everyone still hear me? So the idea here is to create a muscle pair each robotic joint that we want to control. So the idea is that we surgically create a muscle pair in the amputated limb, and each pair is assigned to a robotic degree of freedom. So in this picture, it's a person with an above knee amputation with a robotic knee and ankle. So we create two muscle pairs, or two AMIs, one for the knee and one for the ankle. So we did a lot of preclinical work, and then we decided to try this on a human patient. And my friend Jim Ewing, of 27 years, a climbing friend, decided to volunteer. Jim was in a tragic mountain climbing accident. He fell a very far distance and hit a rocky ground surface and broke many bones in his body. One of his legs was damaged. It was so damaged with every step, he felt excruciating pain. So it turned out that by amputating his leg, he had a better hope of having a better quality of life. So we amputated Jim's leg, and we applied this AMI technique. So we created a dynamic muscle pair for the ankle and one for the subtalar joint for inverting and everting the foot ankle. This surgery was done at Brigham and Women's under the direction of Matt Carty. And our hypothesis was after the surgery, Jim would be able to move his bionic limb and feel the movements as if it's part of his body, even without looking at the bionic limb. So we later, after he healed, after the surgery, we attached his residuum to a robot, and we put electrodes on each muscle so that as Jim fires these muscles with his brain, we decode the muscle signals and use those to control the robot. So here he's telling us what he's doing with the robot via his unaffected leg. So he's so we thought that was great. But then Jim stood up and he began walking across terrain, across steps and slopes. And what we observed was truly magical. The natural movements or biomechanics were mediated through his bionic limb. And his bionic limb was just moving in a natural way. So all these movements that we observed in the bionic limb, for example, as shown here going up steps, Jim was not trying to do. The movements were involuntary. So when he went down steps, for example, the bionic toe reached for the next stair tread for shock attenuation. So because Jim's brain is getting the muscle tendon biological sensing called proprioception, his brain knows exactly how to control the bionic limb in a natural way across stairs and slopes and so on. Jim started to do really strange things. So one day in lab, he accidentally stood on a roll of electrical tape and it got stuck to his bionic sneaker. And instead of reaching down and removing the roll of tape from his shoe. He instead did this. Through brain control, he wiggled his foot ankle until it dropped off, a completely natural human response. At the end of the experimental session, we were just chatting with Jim about life, about his family, just a chit chat, and he began gesturing with his foot ankle in a completely natural way. So you just don't see this in a typical artificial limb. In this limb, because it's connected to the brain bidirectionally, it really has become part of Jim's body. And Jim started saying unusual things. He said things like, the robot became part of me.
Really, literally within minutes of having it all connected, it starts becoming part of me.
So this is Jim before the amputation. And Jim's dream, like my own when my accident occurred, was to return to mountain climbing. So we built him a bionic rock climbing leg that's fully brain controlled. And then Jim returned to the Cayman Islands where his accident occurred, where he fell 50 feet onto a rock surface. And we filmed him climbing for the first time in the Cayman Islands with the bionic attendant. We're also working on paralysis. There's a lot of people in the world that use wheelchairs because of spinal cord injury and other conditions. And there's a few lucky people that have access to what's called an exoskeleton, as shown on the right. So these exoskeletons have synthetic motors that are computer controlled that move the limbs that are paralyzed. And for example, walking gait patterns. So what we're trying to do is, instead of using synthetic motors, to use the person's own biological muscles for the movement. So the biological muscles they're non-functional because they're no longer connected to the brain in a natural way because of a cut to the spinal cord. So we're asking the question, could we artificially control the muscles to restore natural movement like walking? And to pursue that, we're looking into optogenetics. Optogenetics, the technique is to inject a virus into a muscle that you wish to control. And then there's a light-sensitive protein that's expressed in the nerve that innervates the muscle. So by shining light on the nerve, you can actually control muscle. So here's a video of a small mouse where we're shining blue light onto the skin. There's enough light that gets to the nerve that reaches these light-sensitive proteins. That the pulse in the muscle can be controlled through light. I want to emphasize that there's nothing synthetic inside the body of this animal. There's no synthetic implant whatsoever. We're simply shining light on the skin of the animal. We also need artificial sensors to measure the length, speed, and force of a muscle. If we're going to control muscle, we need to know information about the muscle. So here we're injecting small little magnets into muscle. And then with electronics on the surface of the body, here is shown a demo, we can track the positions of the magnets in space. So this is just a desktop demo. The electronics that would sit on the skin are very small. They're about the size of a credit card. And then by measuring the field, the magnetic fields, we can determine mathematically the spatial position of the magnets inside the body and track muscles. So here's an animal with a paralyzed limb where we can apply the light in controlled fashions and control the position of the limb. And what we're working up towards is with an animal that has a whole limb that's paralyzed, enabling it to walk again through this light control, the magnetic sense feedback. And so our dream is that one day through such technologies as optogenetics and magnet tracking, that a person shown in the right here, this lovely lady, will be able to walk and run and skip without a bulky motorized exoskeleton through the use of her own muscle and synthetic computation. But the future will have exoskeletons, but the exoskeletons will do more than simply bring a human's functionality up to normal physiological levels. The exoskeletons will be used when we want to go beyond nature, when we want to augment capability. So Hollywood has given us incredible visions of how exoskeletons are going to augment human strength, jumping height, and running speed. And the field is actually making progress towards these long-term dreams. So here's an exoskeleton that my group at MIT has developed that runs in parallel with the leg and stiffens every time the foot hits the ground, so that the exoskeleton takes the force instead of the biological leg, lowering stress on the biological leg and making it easier to run. A company that's spun out of my group at MIT, for which I'm a co-founder, called Defy, is using these exoskeletal ideas to change how shoes work, or boots. So here's a boot that's motorized and bionic that augments walking and running and jumping. With a simple donning and doffing, you can put it on very quickly, very, very efficiently, as easy as putting on a shoe, and it augments physicality. So we imagine a future where you go into a shoe store and you see shoes that are bionic, such as a low heel shoe or even a high heel shoe, motorized technologies that use artificial intelligence that adapt with the human as they move to enable tremendous running speeds, jumping heights, and enabling us to walk at incredibly low energies. I'm often asked what this technology is like, and the only thing I can say is when you're at the airport and you hit the moving walkway, that's what it's like, except you always have a moving walkway underneath your feet. It's that easy to walk and to move with these devices. Our bionic work extends to all kinds of areas. To join the global effort in COVID-19, my group has worked in collaboration with the hardware open source community to develop an open standard respirator, an N95 bidirectional filtering system that's reusable. So this has been designed, and we're working with many groups to gear up to build 5 million units of this technology to get it to people that need it globally. So I'll finish up with a section called New Identities. So I think, I hope I've convinced you that the future will be quite surprising and magical in the realm of bionics. We'll have various ways of augmenting our capability, of augmenting human strength and jumping height, but also augmenting how we create, what we feel. And 50 years from now, every human will have access to these technologies and will be able to sculpt or adapt their own capabilities. And by doing so, adapt their own identity. So even not only can our bodies be redesigned, but our very identities. And I've experienced this identity adaptation in my own life in a simple way. So before my accident, I was a top rock climber, climbing in Yosemite Valley. I'm 1,000 feet off the ground here and hanging on with my fingertips. So I was considered one of the top climbers in the United States. But after my accident, my legs were amputated. I was told that I'd never climb again. But when I started climbing better than I did before my accident with artificial limbs, people claimed I was cheating and threatened to cut their own legs off so they could compete with me in rock climbing. So I began the presentation with this photograph, and I'll show it again. And I asked you, what do you see in this photograph? Do you see weakness? Do you see disability? Or do you see power and authority? Do you see the future of athletics, perhaps? I think you know what I see. So as we march into this 21st century, all the conditions that you see here coming up, we will conquer through innovation, through technology. Just using the same narrative as what's happened with my body and my life. We will overcome disability through technological innovation. You know, you can't with a straight face say that I'm disabled. I can run, I play tennis, I mountain climb, I do what I want physically because of fantastic bionic technology. Now, if you remove the technology from my body, I'm very disabled. But with the technology, I'm freed from shackles of disability. So as we march into the 21st century, we will develop the fundamental science and technology to conquer disability, to overcome human limitation. And it'll begin a conversation of human potential, not human disability or human limitation. And the same technology that we'll use to overcome and conquer disability, we'll be able to use to extend human capability beyond innate physiological levels, cognitively, emotionally, and physically. So the future indeed holds tremendous promise in the area of bionics, but not without risk. Clearly, there's threats to every new technology, and that's very, very true for bionics as well. It doesn't take much of imagination to imagine ways in which people could use bionic technology in nefarious, inappropriate ways. But I think through policy and law, we can mitigate these inappropriate uses and set forth the wonderful duty that we have, I feel, with technology to eliminate disability and disease in the world, while deeply respecting and adhering to what we hold dear, such as individual freedoms and valuing human diversity.
Oh my gosh. Well, first, thank you so much. That is absolutely moving and inspiring. And gosh, if anyone ever says education can't get you wherever you want to go, they are just crazy. So let's start with the questions at the top. All right. Tina's asking Jamie, I believe, what advice do you have for individuals with non-linear career paths, and how can they use that to their advantage?
Yeah. So first of all, Hugh, that's an amazing story. And, you know, in terms of thinking about the future, it's funny that you talked about moving sidewalks, because literally the last time I was at an airport with my wife, which seems like 6 years ago, we were walking on a moving sidewalk, and I turned to her while we're walking on this, and I said, what would the world look like if this was the speed at which we walked? How would that change things if we walked at this speed, right? And so it makes you think about what the world would look like given that. I'm not concerned about using that kind of technology for bad things. I'm more concerned about potentially the wealth gap between those that have access to that type of the technology and those that won't have access. I'm sure you guys are thinking through that as well. But when it comes to the question that the student asked about career paths, this is what I tell most people, is not to look in terms of, you know, you want to be in this career and you take this step and then this step and this step. I talk about opportunities, find opportunities. Again, when I graduated from graduate school, there was no company called Google. I couldn't prepare to work at a company called Google. What I could do, though, is continue to build my skills and continue to build my learning so that I can continue building my skill and so forth, so that I can have a package full of skills to use in lots of different areas. And so I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in government, I've worked in electronics and high tech, I've worked in education. And the skills that are transferable are the ones that you should focus on. So when you look at a job, don't look at a job and say, how does this fit my career path? Look at a job and say, what skills am I building here? And are these skills going to be transferable?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, to me, education is not confined to an undergraduate or even a PhD. It's lifelong. And education fundamentally is learning how to learn.
Which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, the world, as we've really experienced in 2020, is ever changing and unpredictable. And we need to be educated. We need to be smart so that we can be as adaptive and constructive as we can in our futures. Another thing I want to add is, I want to state something very, very simple, that it's very important that young people follow their dreams and passions, because passion is the fuel that gets us through the night. Learning materials is hard. Doing jobs in an excellent way is difficult. And if you don't care about the problems you're trying to solve, you're not going to put in that effort. So it's critically important to go into areas that have problems that you care about. Very, very important.
And then I'll ask a question for Professor Herr, and then we have another one for Jamie as well. Professor Herr, Brian would like to know, how resilient are the bionic legs to the environment around them?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Some computer-controlled limbs are waterproof. Most are not. You're able to go out in a rainstorm or shovel snow, things like that. But one should avoid jumping in a swimming pool. They can be made waterproof. It's just that technology exists, of course, but it just would increase the cost of the unit. They're fairly durable. They're in no way as durable as a biological body, because there's no adaptation or that's happening in biological systems. So with a lot of money and a huge amount of effort and a massive engineering team, typically a prosthesis has a 5-year life. So that's something we can learn from biology. Some of us humans go practically 100 years without any repair. It's absolutely remarkable, and we're so far from being able to do that in our machines.
Right.
Absolutely. Jamie, question. So when beginning a new project or venture, what do you view as your personal metric for success and happiness? Do you define your micro day-to-day happy and your macro overall year-to-year happy? Like, how do you define that success? And do you think that this is the time for most entrepreneurial types or that it would be the same for most entrepreneurial types or for most people?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that changes as you grow. And so, for example, when I was in interviews, you get asked that question, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? Or what do you want to be doing in 10 years? In my head, I gave the public answer, the right answer, but in my head, the answer was not poor. That was it. That was my goal. That's been my goal for a very long time. It's just not to be poor, because that's how I grew up. But once you meet that threshold, once you're like, yeah, I'm not poor anymore, then all of a sudden you start looking at other metrics and what looks like success. And as you get older, sorry about that. As you get older, you realize that the metrics become more about your legacy, and it becomes more about the impact that you can have and how people, or the impact that you can have on children, your children, other children, the impact that you can have in your community. And at the end of the day, no matter how much money you make, no matter what you do in your life, as the professor said, like following your passion is what's going to drive things. Following your passion is what's going to bring you that joy, and you end up realizing that the real metric of success is joy, happiness, appreciation, being in the moment. Those are the things that are success. We do a terrible job in this country defining success in terms of someone is successful because they work 90 hours to create this thing and they made $1 million. Those aren't success metrics. And the same as education. When people say to me, you should go check out this school because they're very successful, they usually mean test scores. And my criteria for success is, are those students happy? Do they bring joy? Are they building their skills and their passions? I mean, those are the things that we should be targeting.
Absolutely. I think it was John Lennon that a teacher asked him a question in high school, and she said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, happy.
Right.
Missing the point. And he said, no, I think you're missing the point. And I 100% agree with that. So thank you. That's incredible. Professor Herr, let's see. Dominique would like to know if these boots would be helpful for the less mobile or the elderly as well.
Oh, great question. Thank you. Yeah, the answer is a resounding yes. And let me touch on the elderly. So in all mammals, what happens with age is the muscles lose fast twitch fibers. And because of that, muscles lose their strength and their speed and their power. And that's one big reason why an elderly person walks the way they walk. They kind of walk slowly and they shuffle and they're hunched over. And that's another reason. It's also a reason why a lot of elderly people have joint osteoarthritis, because they don't have the muscle power to walk properly. And because of that, there's tremendous musculoskeletal stress throughout their body, which ultimately results in joint disease. So with exoskeleton and robotics and machine learning, we can put young muscles on people independent of their age. So with that bionic shoe, the dream is that an elderly person can just go to a retail store down the street from where they live and buy bionic shoes and suddenly walk with 18-year-old calf muscles. And when they do that, we have evidence that their pain that they feel in their arthritic knees and hips will go down tremendously. So it's an incredibly exciting area that I'm passionate about.
Absolutely.
There's many forms of augmentation. One form of augmentation is, as you age, you always have your performance that you had when you're 18. And what's filling in the gap from your where you would be with age-related degeneration to where you want to be with the physicality of an 18-year-old is technology. And in that world of augmentation, you may run your best marathon when you're 75, using that normalizing technology. So that's one area we're working towards.
And Emma,
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Emma, it looks like you have a question. Did you want to ask Professor Herr? I don't know if she maybe dropped off. Emma wanted to know, how does this relate to neurological issues? Or does it?
Yeah, so a lot of the technologies that I described can be used for neurological conditions, for various types of limb pathologies. I mentioned spinal cord injury, that's one. Stroke, a long list of such conditions where there's a loss of motor function or a loss of the ability to move in a natural way. You can use optogenetics and these implants as well as potentially exoskeletons to improve a person's quality of life.
Very nice. Jamie, let's see. Arnab has a question for you. I have a lot of interest in many things I'm passionate about, but it never feels like I have enough time to obtain the knowledge I need to fix the problems that I would like to solve. Is there a way to resolve this?
That's a great question, because I don't believe that you don't have enough time. One of my videos on my YouTube channel is around the concept of being busy and how we're not busy. Busy is this construct that we made where it's a way to describe, so how are you? Oh, I'm busy. I'm very, very busy. I'm important, therefore I'm busy. Or people say to me all the time, like, you must be very busy. I'm like, no, if you got time to watch Netflix, you're not busy. If you have time to binge watch Friends after you've watched it 5 times, you're probably not busy. So I think it's important to figure out where your time goes and what you spend your time on. And a great experiment is to sit down literally with a notebook and just write it, 7 to 7:30, 7:30 to 8, write down the whole day, and then be honest about yourself and with yourself, and write down what you do during that time. And you do that for a week, or you do that for a month, all of a sudden you start seeing these time gap buckets of things that you're doing which make no sense. So if you sit there and scroll the internet for half an hour, you don't realize a half an hour has gone by, but what you can do in a half an hour is insane. So I would say to reprioritize and really understand where you're spending your time. And back to what the professor said, is that when you find your passion, when you find your thing, that's all you want to work on, right? That's all you want to do. And, and this is hard for people to believe, but when Fridays come, I'm usually down. I'm upset because I got to go be social with people. I got to go entertain people. I have to do family commitment things. And I'm glad to do them, but I can't wait for Monday again to get back going again. So if you're not waking up on Monday going, yes, I can't wait to get back on what I'm passionate about, then you're probably spending time on things that you don't want to do. And one last comment I want to say about what the professor said about our bodies. We don't often think about, I have this joke about being 52 years old, and like, I always talk about, like, my body is 52 years old. And I say to people, what do you have in your house that's 52 years old that isn't an antique, right? Like you have nothing in your house that's 52 years old, unless it's like sitting behind glass somewhere, right? You don't have a 52-year-old television set. And so we don't often think about our bodies getting older and what they do. And so technology like this to kind of reverse that, or to fight that is just incredible what you've been able to do. And to think about the fact that we know so little about the brain. Imagine what's going to happen when we know more.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Let's see, Mr. Herr, how does the body react to a foreign object being connected to a limb?
Yeah, maybe the question meant a synthetic object inside the body. Is that?
Yeah, it's probably more like
Correct. And I think it goes with his second.
Okay.
Would amputees whose financial situation doesn't permit them to afford these sort of bionics be able to obtain them anyhow?
Yeah, let me target that second question. Yeah, reimbursement is a tremendous challenge. We are currently trying to increase access of bionic limbs by creating a bionic vehicle, basically a laboratory on wheels where we can drive into any community. If there's a road, we can get there. And on that vehicle is, 3D printers and electronics and many, many powerful technological tools that we can image the patient, we can do computational design, we can 3D print and build them the body that they deserve. So with that model of delivery, I think we can tremendously increase access, not only in the US, but throughout the world.
Okay, and we have one last question to Professor Herr. Have you considered undergoing additional surgery of your limbs in the newer dynamic amputation styles so that you could experience feeling and movement passively and or through thought with newer mechatronics?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm just thinking very carefully exactly how I want to surgically and technologically adapt my body. But yeah, I will probably go under the knife in the next several years. Exactly as you say, to have really advanced control and to be able to feel my mechatronic limbs. And I really want to experience that, because I want, again, what we're observing with patients that have brain control to the limbs. I probably will go into the knife in the next few years to get these incredible brain interfaces in my own body.
Absolutely, and get to experience your own invention like that. That's incredible. Okay, so we do have one last question before, I don't want to take up too much of Mr. Casap's and Professor Herr's time. So to Jamie Casap, when I was in 10th grade, I was extremely passionate about robotics. I would spend several hours every day working on my team's robot, coming in the morning, having lunch in the robotics room, staying after school for an hour or two, bringing the robot home and working on it all day, all just to, you know, spend time developing this robot. But I did it in such a way that I forgot to take care of myself and was hospitalized. How can I prevent that from happening again?
Yeah, that's a great point, right? And I think we all, self-care is an important part of this, right? So, and sometimes those of us that talk about entrepreneurship and those of us that work and are passionate about what we do, we don't talk about the fact that we also have to work on self-care. We also have to work on taking time off and disengaging from some of the work to do other things. It doesn't mean that you can't grow by doing that. I don't mean just disengaging and sitting on a couch watching Netflix. There's just separating yourself from something is actually a good thing, because it gives you an opportunity to step back and think about new ideas or think about something different. So for example, as passionate as I am with everything that I do, I'm also really excited because tomorrow I'm packing up in the truck and going up to the Grand Canyon because I'm an astrophotographer, right? And I go and do that. I'm gonna spend 2 days doing that. So that's my downtime. Even though I'm still learning and I'm still processing, I'm still doing something, I'm creating art, it's still downtime compared to what I do day to day. So I think it's important to recognize that self-care and being purposeful about it and taking time for yourself and exercising and eating right. I think if you do those things along the path, you'll do good. And you have to understand that you have to sleep, right? I think the professor will tell you that probably sleep is the most important thing that you can focus on, right? And getting that required sleep is what's the best thing for your brain.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Just one note to echo some of those thoughts. My best ideas occur on vacation.
Yeah.
And whenever that happens, I'm like, why don't I take more vacations? So one, you have to be rested, you have to be healthy to be at peak power, peak creativity. You have to take care of yourself.
I 100% agree. And that's where I get some of my best ideas, as well as learning new things, whether it's, you know, an adjacent field or something completely unrelated. It gives me creative ideas in my everyday business with the companies that I work with. So I love that. You guys, thank you so much for coming and spending your time with us, taking time out of your day to do this. I think it just really highlights again how it doesn't matter where you are, what you have, what you don't have. If you have an idea and you spend time on it and you just laser focus and find your passion, that you can absolutely achieve anything that you want to. Anything that you can dream up is completely possible. And we've got 2 real life examples right here where social impact innovation was, you know, has come out of struggles of these 2 incredible humans, and they have changed the world for the better because they were passionate about bettering themselves and the world around them as well. So I think that's just, you know, a lesson I'm going to go away with. And again, we are absolutely honored to have you here. Everyone is just blowing up on the chat if you want to take a look about how inspiring the 2 of you were. And again, we are so grateful. So I'm going to unmute everybody in just a moment, if I can do that, so that we can give you guys a big round of applause. Or if everyone wants to unmute themselves, go ahead, because I would love to be able to give them a real round of applause.